Good morning. Thank you for taking the time to join us for Vandis's Tech in 20-minute demo of FireMon Policy Manager. Today's demo session will be led by Jared Sigmund, Senior Sales Engineer, and Tim Woods, Vice President, Technology Alliances at FireMon. At today's demo, you'll see how FireMon's Network Security Posture Management platform automates the management of firewall and cloud security policies to increase visibility, eliminate policy-related risks, streamline rule changes, and meet compliance requirements. Before we get started, I'll remind you that this session is being recorded. If you have questions, please type them in the Q&A panel and we will address them at the end or during the session. For those of you who are new to Vandis, Vandis specializes in optimizing and securing hybrid network infrastructures to achieve maximum value for our clients. With our proven process, anchored by our deep industry knowledge, we deliver solutions and successful outcomes which cultivate strong connections and trust with our customers. For over 40 years, Vandis has delivered comprehensive strategies for secure IT infrastructures. We have partnered with FireMon so that our client security teams are empowered with the tools needed to improve visibility across hybrid and multi-vendor IT environments, ensuring that changes and potential risks are quickly identified and mitigated. And now it's my pleasure to turn it over to Tim.
Jen, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And I appreciate everyone's time. Hey, we recognize you could be doing 1,000 other things, but you've chosen to spend some time with us this morning. And for that, we are sincerely appreciative. So we'll just jump into it here very quickly. Quick introduction. We're going to talk a little bit about why FireMon, and then Jared's going to actually give you the picture. A picture paints 1,000 words, so he's going to show you an actual demonstration of the product. If you're not familiar with FireMon, hopefully you are, but if you're not, we've been around for a better part of 20 years, so a lot of deep maturation in this market. We're humbled to serve some of the largest enterprises on the planet globally in helping them to secure a better security outcome and improve their security posture across their hybrid cloud environments. I always like to kind of start, this is typically what a customer journey looks like that we engage with, kind of where are you at today and where are you going? And once we get to where it is that we want to go, how do we stay there? But in the manual phase, we find that people are still using email and spreadsheets, and maybe they're using an ITSM, something like ServiceNow or Jira in the middle, and trying to make that work for them from a firewall change control process, but then they find that they're lacking some of the documentation and the policies to interconnect those two, and sometimes it's kind of a force fit. So we kind of want to get to this dynamic stage where we're detecting change within the environment, and we're able to analyze that change real time. We're able to give you the who, the what, the when, the where, all the details of these changes. But then also when we get to that final stage in the proactive, we want to recognize that if you're going to make the investment and spend the time, the effort, the energy, and the money to kind of become compliant and to get to where you're going in this dynamic area, how do I stay there? How do I become more proactive so that I don't fall back into the same state of ill repair that I found myself in once we get there? Hey, we get it. Policy management is not easy. There's a lot of complication. There's growing complexity, the unused, the duplicate, the shadowed. Probably the biggest offender to policy management across the landscape is the overly permissive access that grows over time. So how do I challenge that unnecessary complexity that creeps into the equation that causes increased risk and misconfiguration and human error across my environment? These are the things that we can definitely help you with. We set in the middle and we monitor anything basically within your environment that has an access control list on it. So yeah, we talk a lot about firewalls and managing the policies on firewalls, but the reality is there's all for the security devices that are spread across your environment today. Almost everything has a policy. If you look at your SD-WAN today, they have policy. If you're leveraging SASE, there's advanced cloud firewall functionality in the SASE cloud. When you start looking at native cloud, you've got native security posture and security groups, you've got VPCs, you've got native firewalls, and then you have third-party inserted firewalls potentially within that environment, and you're trying to tie that in. So there has to be a strong commitment to a robust API as well. I like to say we want to be able to raise the total value of your combined security solutions by allowing you to easily exchange information between the security systems that you're using today. So having that tie-in to the API is critically important. But I'm going to stop talking now, and I'm going to turn it over to Jared so that Jared can give you an actual live demonstration of the product in action.
Thank you. I was trying to unmute myself. Thanks, Tim, for that introduction and passover. Really good setup into what we're talking about today. That is bringing all of your devices, say a device, it could be anything that was listed out there by Tim, your cloud accounts, on-premise, hybrid environments, proxies, load balancers, switches, routers, really anything is a device to FireMon. But it really all starts with visibility, right? So we want to make sure that we have awareness of change going through your environment. And we understand that that change can exist outside of maybe the daily responsibilities of my technologies. But as a security-minded individual, I need to know what my DevOps team's doing. I need to know what my networking team's doing, my cloud ops teams. I need to know, and that visibility that we provide is very paramount to the security teams and organizations' success. And it all starts with bringing devices in to FireMon so we have that visibility. And I can help picture what that looks like kind of in its most simplistic terms. We're connecting to the vendor however they let us connect. It could be an API call, it could be an SSH connection to like an old legacy switch out there. But really first and foremost, what we're doing is when we connect to that device, we're going to do a complete discovery. So change to FireMon means literally anything that changes on the device. And that could be a policy change, it could be a configuration change. All of those trigger some sort of action that needs visibility. And that visibility can be like a comment. Hey, I have business justification that needs to be added to my rule. I want to be aware of that. It could be all of your rules. So bringing in literally from my Azure environment, all of my NSGs, my VNets, my Azure firewall policies, making sure that I understand what all of my objects are doing, where they're used, service, user, application objects, anything that has layer 7, like a next generation firewall, Palo Alto comes to mind, but many other vendors. So incorporating things like layer 7 application awareness, but bringing all of those in addition to the device connectivity. So NAT interfaces, zones, routes, so I can understand how those devices communicate and how the policies affect that communication. But the first thing that I'm going to be able to do when something changes is visualize that in the form of a change report. So I'll give you a delta of that real-time change that helps me understand of everything I just talked about, or each one of these tabs. This is something, for example, that changed in real time. But it doesn't have to be just a real-time change that you want to capture. How has my policy evolved over time? What did my change window status look like for the past week? Do I want a list of Monday morning reports or a Monday morning report that shows me all of my changes that took place over the past weekend, or give me a list of reports that took place over the past month? So it really starts with visibility, understanding that I'm going to have a bunch of objects that have been added, modified, removed. So not just security rules, but actually the changes within that we need to help visualize. So once we have those changes, of course, this can be notified via email, syslog, all sorts of ways to get you this information because you're always not logged into the dashboard. That's perfectly fine. But having this awareness so we can help have better security is, the first step into making our policies more secure and our environments more secure. And the next thing I want to do, of course, they have your configurations. I'm going to want to do something with them. And we talk about the 3 C's, change, just talked about, cleanup being the next one, get to compliance here in just a few minutes. But we have at FireMon a bunch of out-of-the-box reports, and we talk about a prescriptive type of process to clean up your environment. And this analysis section does exactly that. So we'll start with step one, understanding low-hanging fruit, technical debt. Things like duplicate objects. So understanding that, maybe through turnover, acquisitions, one reason or another, I have a bunch of, similarly or differently named objects that belong to like the same IP address or network or service group. So being able to provide naming conventions and standards for your policies, ease administration, understanding where removable rules can be affecting your policies, the complexity that those type of rules add. They'll never have hits, so why would we have them in our policy is our idea. And then consolidating rules is another great report that helps me merge similarly configured rules into a single source, so I understand where policy change is needed. And once again, all of these reports are there to ease administration, reduce complexity. So that next step is understanding how I can help refine access through cleanup and detailed usage analysis. I have another section that allows me to provide all things usage and statistics, but we go much deeper at FireMon in terms of our analysis. And I'll bring up a report example. It's actually my favorite report that we have here. It seems kind of silly to say like a report's like one of my favorite things about FireMon, but it really is, because this helps understand and articulate really how much deeper we go in the value that we provide through just something like an object level analysis. So this is a number that every vendor, or almost every vendor, will give you. Nothing secretive there. But where we go is understanding not only the object usage, but nested object usage within that. And really where we talk about being able to refine access, think of the example of, physically removing, a server from the environment where it's no longer needed. But we don't always understand where usage is taking into account, and not just from the hit count. I see that number, I think that everything in my rules used, but without our deeper level of analysis, I don't understand that I have a bunch of unused objects within this single source group. So what that means is I could potentially be allowing something unintended or unwanted without any formalized change management process. A new application or server just happens to repurpose and be allocated this IP address, then it's being allowed without change management process. So being able to refine access through deeper level of analysis is just how we go above and beyond what the vendors will allow you to see. And then it would probably be remiss for me to say, rather than having to log into, several different dashboards or consoles to get this, same information, or information that probably doesn't even exist on a lot of those vendors, having that centralized into a single source really streamlines operational teams and helps provide additional value by freeing up your time. So talked about change, talked about a little bit of cleanup. One more example, I'm going to segue this into some compliance related conversation. But for that, I'm going to introduce FireMon's security rules for the first time. So what this allows us to do, it's policy information. It's not a secret. It probably looks familiar to you. But what we have in addition to that is, some FireMon related columns. So we talked about change, cleanup related tasks, compliance related tasks. What I want to do in this exercise is, briefly show you how I can help clean up something like an overly permissive rule, something that would be considered a compliance violation, but still falls up under my cleanup tasks. So to do that, I can ask the system a series of questions, just observe about 11,000 rules to start. Nothing secretive here. Go through and really query anything through policy, both from a policy and object perspective, maybe a security profile or a FireMon statistic, anything from rule documentation as well. So understanding that FireMon has its own rule documentation that helps you better understand items like, owner, business justification. Was this rule ever reviewed? What was the decision of those rules? All of those are queryable fields as well to help me narrow down a scope of certain security rules. I'm going to preload a filter that allows me to understand, source everything from this internal private address space, including that any object destined out to public DNS, including any, and then accepted with hits. So everything allowed to and from the internet. These are all compliance violations, but I want to clean those up. What I can essentially do is create a traffic flow profile that sniffs usage traffic coming in. Remember, we're collecting that. And what that allows me to do is print out a pretty report that shows the individual sources or the flows, tuple information with the source, destination, and services, and even the application. So the goal here is to create more restrictive policy above this target any rule. And it doesn't have to be an any object. It can be like either class C, class B, a wide open network. But really what we see is that most of those, kind of back to my rule usage example, a lot of the criteria or the objects defined in our policies aren't actually used. So to be able to create more restrictive policy with what is actually being used, or things like, think of, microsegmentation, understanding segmented policies that we can create as well. So there's all sorts of great useful tools, but really kind of falls into cleanup. And then the last thing that I want to talk about is compliance. And to FireMon, that's customized compliance. So incorporating compliance frameworks, industry standards, think PCI, NIST, NERC, CIS, any sort of cloud best practices, any sort of vendor best practices. All of those are set up and defined and run against every single one of my configurations. And that could be going into a Palo device and understanding that I have a bunch of violations. Like I said, it could be a best practices, it could be part of an industry framework, but these are constantly running and monitoring against my devices. And these are completely customizable. So we could use an out-of-the-box framework, and we can easily manipulate our compliance framework to adhere and care about what matters most to you. And these work, as you can see, my query, I probably should have scrolled down as well, as another great use case here is that I'm querying across all of my technologies. So Palo, Cisco, cloud accounts, different technologies, different vendors, different on-premise, different cloud accounts. And if I go into any of these cloud accounts, I get that same level of exposure, same dashboarding, same compliance, trust, and understanding based on a number of different criteria. So those compliance requirements can change at any given time. Like I said, FireMon allows us to customize and adapt our compliance controls to meet the needs of changing business demands, but really ensuring that the visibility components of FireMon are kept. So we need to be able to make sure as we're cleaning up our policies, people aren't re-violating them. So these controls really operate as guardrails and an understanding that if someone puts in an any rule that would re-violate my compliance, I now have all of these automated actions and reports and alerts that can trigger and tell me that, Jared made a new violation today. Let's go understand what that is. My change report tells me that, but then the violation is very clear and concise. And then all of that is associated with comprehensive reporting. So think of how arduous those audits can be from a manual and time-consuming perspective. I now am able to incorporate all of those controls across all of my devices in a single comprehensive report that can be tailored or tweaked to include as much or as little information as you want that an auditor would want to see, or in this particular example, maybe an auditor wouldn't want to see this, but we use FireMon to clean that up. And then we're constantly being assessed, and every time those configurations change, we rerun this assessment, and that's how we maintain continuous compliance. And then all of this can be automated, set on schedules. So those, like I said, those time-consuming tasks become, less arduous and tedious. But I do want to, I know that we're kind of running short on time. I do want to open it back up to Tim and or the group for questions. Wasn't monitoring chat, but if there's questions or anything else, now would be the time. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Jared. This is good. Jared, could you pop up kind of a central, the overview screen just real quick there? and come down just a little bit. So guys, one of the things that we do is we bring all the telemetry when we collect all of this policy information and much of the information that Jared showed you. You have these dashboards, but what I love about policy, and I wouldn't have known what to do with something like this back in the day when I was managing firewalls. I absolutely would don't even know how I would have reacted to have be able to dig this deep into the policies like this, especially around the documentation. It was always a struggle. But when you see a dashboard within the policy manager environment here, you're never more than a click away to get to the underlying data. And that's what I like about this. It's more than just a pretty face or a pretty picture, whether it's a bar chart or a pie chart or anything like that. You click on it and it takes you to the underlying information. That way you can start building remediations around that because you now have actionable intelligence that you can use to correct those issues and those control failures that Jared was pointing out. Guys, if you have a question, put it in the chat. We've got about another 4 or 5 minutes here. So if you have any questions, by all means, put that in the chat. Jared, I do a lot of interfacing with CISOs and security directors, and the one thing that comes back time and time again, it's just the general lack of visibility across the environment. It's more of a concern. It's I've spent a lot of money, I have a lot of these different solutions, but I still don't have the comfort that I need to have across my environment to know when a change happens, did that change do harm, right? I don't care, when we look at compliance, I don't think there's any regulatory compliance initiative out there that doesn't ask you if you're not monitoring for change, right? Are you monitoring for change, yes or no? And it may be in the form of, are you looking at your log data? Are you monitoring your log data? Are you analyzing your log data? But what they're really asking there is, are you looking at change? And do you have the ability to analyze change as it happens within the environment? And they're trying to answer that all important question. The change that just happened, did it do harm? Yes or no? Did the change have a negative impact to my security posture? Did the change that just took place within my environment, did it have a negative impact to risk within my environment? At the end of the day, I think it's our responsibility to manage risk to a level that's acceptable by the business. But did that change? And that's in real time. So I want to reinforce what Jared said earlier. We do all this in real time. So it's not something that happened 2 hours ago or a day ago. I mean, we're looking at things as they happen. And the reason that's so critically important today is because the frequency of change that happens across these growing hybrid environments. When you think about ground to cloud, and when you're trying to put your arm around all of the policies from the data center to the remote office to the headquarters to the SD-WAN and the transitionary devices that get you up into cloud provisioning, and then you think about all the policies that are in cloud, just trying to get a visualization, trying to understand policy behavior across the entire estate just becomes, it's not something you can do manually anymore. You have to have something that can do policy behavioral analysis. But to be able to do it real time brings a whole nother dimension into the game so that you can react to these things as they take place. But you need to have automation that kind of validates and vets that as it happens to bring those things to the forefront so that you know what you should be focusing on. But that's generally what I hear is when I hear people talk about a lack of visibility, when I hear a CISO or I hear a security director or I hear a CFO or even a CIO, they'll say, we're not comfortable with the level of visibility across our environment.
Yeah.
What they're really saying there, right? They're really saying, I can't see change. Change is happening within my environment, and I don't know if it's good change or bad. It's hard to secure the unknown. It's hard to secure what you can't see. So they're really uncomfortable with the lack of with the lack of visibility that they have.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really good point. And just kind of wrap up my thoughts and kind of summarize all of that is, to leave you with something to kind of pique your interest and a little bit more FireMon offers is, all of the intelligence, all of the visibility, all of the controls, all of the compliance frameworks. We get to this place where we're clean and sanitary, and we don't want to be in this evolving cycle of, hey, I just pushed out bad change. I got to go clean it up again. So FireMon places all of that intelligence into your change workflow process that allows you to push out only known good change. So we're going to understand if you're going to break something from a network or compliance perspective, and we're going to catch bad change from preventing you from, like I said, being in that evolving cycle of cleanup and compliance. So being able to place that intelligence is very paramount to future customers' success.
For sure. Jared, thank you very much. Joanne, you want to wrap us?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. You guys did a great job, by the way. So I would like to thank you both for your demonstration today of the FireMon Policy Manager. We hope it provided you insight into the benefits you can achieve from using this solution. We'd also like to thank you for just joining today's session. We are offering participants a trial of FireMon Policy Analyzer tool, which I will send you more information about at later today. And one last reminder to visit vandus.com/events for other events that you might be interested in. If you have any questions following today's session, you can email us at info@vandus.com. Thank you again, and have a wonderful rest of your day.